In an age when everyone is searching for the next best thing and a hot new product, what could a 19th century country lawyer possibly have to teach our generation about leading an organization? Quite honestly, a lot. I chose to do my final project on a book by Donald T. Phillips called Lincoln on Leadership. In this book, Phillips summarizes what we can learn from Honest Abe about not only leading an organization well, but being an effective catalyst for positive change in others. By focusing on four main components of Lincoln's leadership style, including people, character, endeavor, and communication, Phillips conveys that the blueprint for great leadership today was laid down over a century ago. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Donald Phillips himself. He has quite a career. As you can see, he's written 20 books, and he's held various management and executive positions with large corporations as well as privately owned businesses. In addition, he served in several civic roles, including serving as the mayor of Fairview here in Texas. He also travels currently as a motivational speaker, and you can see a picture of him on the screen. So why would Phillips have chosen Lincoln to write about, and why would he have chosen leadership to be the venue for discussion? The purpose of this book was to examine the diverse leadership abilities that have made Abraham Lincoln an inspiration to everyone from businessmen to Barack Obama. It's intended for anyone seeking to hone their own leadership abilities and understand how to reach others who have unique skills, abilities, and ideas that differ from your own. So by focusing on four main components of Lincoln's leadership style, people, character, endeavor, and communication, Phillips conveys that the blueprint for great leadership today was laid down over a century ago. Just in case you didn't know, Abraham Lincoln served as our president in the 19th century, and during his tenure, there was a civil war going on. He came into his presidency at the secession of the Confederate States, so he had massive obstacles to overcome. This book closely examines how Abraham Lincoln was able to step into a very difficult situation and navigate the challenges through strong leadership perspectives. The first attribute that Phillips chooses to focus on is Lincoln's concern for people. His mantra might have been, "Get out of the office and circulate amongst the troops." Lincoln believed strongly in showing your subordinates that you are a team player. He worked to be among those he was leading, to hear what was being said, and see firsthand what needed to happen to resolve various situations which came up. When you spend time among those you lead, actually doing what they do and seeing things from their eyes, you gain their trust. They want to do the things you request of them. This makes it easier for you to gently persuade them to your side, rather than having to lay down decrees which may be ignored or resented. Lincoln, in fact, rarely issued edicts. I thought the quote that Phillips uses was really interesting. Lincoln said, "If you would win a man to your cause, first convince him that you are his sincere friend. Therein is a drop of honey that catches his heart, which, say what he will, is the great high road to his reason, and which, once gained, you will find but little trouble in convincing his judgment of the justice of your cause, if indeed that cause really be a just one." I think that last part of the quote, "if indeed that cause really be a just one," is important because it showed that Lincoln was not arrogant. He was definitely a man of self-reflection and understood that he may not have always had the perfect answer every time. He was willing to listen to other people's opinions. Lincoln was not only concerned about people, he was concerned very, very strongly with character. He did not believe himself to be better than any man, and he worked to show each man he worked with that he would fulfill his duties with integrity and honesty. Phillips notes, "The architecture of leadership, all the theories and guidelines fall apart without honesty and integrity. It's the keystone that holds an organization together." And Lincoln believed that people would assume the character of their leader, so he worked to emulate what he wished to see in the people. Additionally, he did not believe in holding grudges or going after people when they made a mistake. He issued many pardons and worked to show the people they were valuable even after a mistake. Additionally, Lincoln did not believe in allowing petty remarks and insults to get to him. In positions of leadership, someone will always be making remarks because they disagree with something, or they are simply being petty. Allowing these things to get to you seriously diminishes your ability to lead and damages your credibility with everyone. The third characteristic that Phillips mentions that Lincoln had as a high priority was endeavor, so reaching a goal. And he had a huge concern for being decisive. He was not arrogant to think that he had all the answers. In fact, he believed that to lead, one had to be led. Lincoln had the enviable quality of being able to listen to people and be guided by them without being threatened himself. He possessed the open-mindedness and flexibility necessary for worthwhile leadership. And that was Phillips' quote, actually. He actually paid attention to the suggestions and ideas of others, and when possible, he utilized them. He was very quick to offer praise when people did a good job, especially when they were able to suggest an idea which solved a great problem. But whenever there was a failure, he took all the blame squarely on his shoulders. He didn't feel it appropriate to point fingers and punish. This manner of leading allowed for all of the people to feel that they accomplished the goals on their own. And Phillips also quoted, I thought this was interesting, that in a corporation with decisive leaders, the atmosphere is dynamic and vibrant. People move with a spring in their step and purpose in their direction. So obviously endeavor was extremely important to Lincoln, but also communication, and I thought this comic was really funny. And obviously not every corporation is dealing with surgery, but communication is extremely important, and Phillips and Lincoln, I would say, agree. Abraham Lincoln is quoted to say, "This is essentially a people's contest. On the side of the Union, it is a struggle for maintaining in the world that form and substance of government whose leading object is to elevate the condition of men, to lift artificial weights from all shoulders, to clear the paths of laudable pursuit for all, to afford to all an unfettered start and a fair chance in the race of life." How did he go about influencing others through communication? Well, Phillips makes point to mention that he doesn't consider it a one-way street. However, Lincoln was a great storyteller, and he used stories to demonstrate points, but also to reach those he was leading on a very, very personal level. And to that end, he thought that public speaking was a very important skill to hone. He believed in supporting your cause well and being strong in your opinions and communicating with words very effectively. And the last thing about communication that Phillips notes was important to Lincoln was just vision. And I think this was emphasized really well in the book, just because he wanted to show that if you don't know where you're going, how in the world are you going to get there? And I think that Lincoln probably might have had the same idea about that concept. So obviously I have an opinion about this book and what I read and learned, but first of all, I just wanted to let you know how he got all this information. Phillips goes straight to the source for primarily everything. I mean, there's actually like 30 different sources, everything from encyclopedias to other writings, such as by Roosevelt and various other public figures. But he also just uses Lincoln's memoirs and documents that he wrote and left for us to be able to read. He also interjects some of his own personal opinions. It's very clear that Phillips has a very similar idea about the way that you should manage an organization well, which is just being amongst your people and making a strong decision, but considering the input of others. He also uses a great way of documenting Lincoln's opinions rather than just totally focusing on his own, because at the end of every chapter he gives a bulleted list of Lincoln's perspectives and just tips on how Lincoln would lead in a particular situation. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm really glad I read Lincoln on Leadership for several reasons. It gives an awesome window into history. Phillips does a good job of describing some specific battle scenarios and circumstances regarding leadership, which Lincoln had appointed that sometimes worked out and sometimes didn't. So it's just this really neat window into history to get to see kind of firsthand what went on in the Civil War and what it was like to lead during such a critical time in our nation's history. But he writes this book in a very, very simplistic, easy to understand way. He's not using a lot of esoteric terms. He's just talking in a very casual style. And the last thing that I thought was so interesting about this book is that even though he's using a 19th century figure, everything that he pointed out, every point that he made mention of, is very, very relative to today. And I thought that that was definitely a strength of this book. So I know you have to be wondering if we are done yet. And we definitely are. But just in conclusion, I wanted to just keep in your mind that Donald T. Phillips wrote this book to show us what Honest Abe had to contribute to leading an organization even today. And by focusing on four main components of Lincoln's leadership, including people, character, endeavor, and communication, Phillips does convey that the blueprint for great leadership today was laid down over a century ago. Just in closing, many characteristics can make an individual a great leader, and it seems that those leaders are truly timeless. Abraham lived and worked in a time that was much different from ours. However, his principles for guiding those he sought to lead are effective and hold true today. After reading Lincoln on Leadership, I have gained an even greater sense of appreciation for what it takes to be a truly great leader, as well as have gained even more respect for this country lawyer of the 19th century.